Earlier, we introduced you to La Cueva High School's athletic director and head varsity football coach, Brandon Back.
The more knowledge we have on concussions and how concussions affect students' lives and how they can overcome them and how they can avoid them, the safer the game gets.
Part of that knowledge comes from a state law we told you about earlier. It was passed in 2016 and 2017, requiring coaches and students take this concussion training each year. But during our interview with Coach Back, he told us this.
But to be honest with you, I'm as guilty as anybody else of not having proper training and staying up on things that I should have been. And so we've all got to do a better job of making sure that we're taking those trainings and we're doing those things and we're putting ourselves in a good position.
Back is one of about 150 varsity football coaches in the state who did not take the tests prior to the start of last football season. Target 7 looked up the names of all varsity high school football coaches in the state through a website that is used by the New Mexico Activities Association for rostering and scheduling. We then searched their records through the National Federation of High Schools. That's where NMAA requires coaches take the training. We found that of the 500 varsity football coaches listed on the rosters, 31% had not taken the test prior to the 2022 football season. What are your thoughts on that statistic?
I think that's concerning.
Well, that goes to enforcement, really.
It's in the law, so we should be encouraging them to get that number higher.
We took our results to coaches and athletic directors. One of them was Ernie Viramontes. He's the head athletic director for Las Cruces Public Schools, the same district in which Abe Romero was enrolled before he suffered that final fatal blow during a football game last season. Physicians believe Abe had prior undiagnosed concussions.
I think we need to all make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to.
We provided Viramontes with our data. Abe's coach did take the training a few weeks before Abe's last play. However, the district had one coach who had not completed the training.
Looking at the list that we gave us, I think we had a few, and thank you, because that's something that I can follow up with now and see what the list of the coaches. It might have been, were they there and didn't do it? Were they there and then they didn't coach? But it gives me a good idea.
After our interview, the district sent us this email informing us they had made some of their coaches take the training immediately. We also reached out to Albuquerque Public Schools, the state's largest school district. Their athletic director, Adrian Ortega, declined to do an interview. Our research found that about 36% of APS varsity football coaches were not in compliance with state law last season. So we caught up with Ortega during the district's media day.
What are your thoughts? I have no comment on that.
We then showed our data to APS Superintendent Scott Elder.
If we are out of compliance, we will quickly get into compliance.
When we told him we had found coaches from his district who admitted not taking the training, he said this.
That's not okay.
After we presented our data to APS and the NMAA, we noticed coaches like Back started taking the test.
The buck stops with us as head coaches, and that's something that we're just going to have to take ownership on, that we made that mistake.
But who is responsible for making sure people take the test? We asked NMAA Director Sally Marquez.
That is a school decision, so that is done at the school level, and the athletic directors keep those at their office and make sure that they are doing following state statute.
Does the NMAA believe there needs to be any further rules to make sure that coaches are taking the required training?
No, I think the schools do a good job to make sure that they are taking it. Our athletic directors are really very good athletic directors.
The law does not require the NMAA to enforce who takes the training. Earlier, we introduced you to Senator Bill Soules. He's one of the legislators who wrote the concussion law. He says NMAA should take a bigger role.
The NMAA overall of all of athletics should have some responsibility to ensure that it's being followed.
The law does not address what should happen if a coach does not take the test. Should there be any punishment for coaches that are shown to not have taken the training?
I don't know whether there should be punishments unless they are purposefully not taking it, whether they're willfully not doing it.
Target 7 found other states like Texas require all school districts to have a concussion oversight team that is headed by at least one physician. Those oversight teams check for proof of concussion training. Is that something New Mexico needs?
At this time, I believe it needs to go back to school, local autonomy.